Hello and welcome to Illumination Podcast with Nick and Kizma. I'm Nick, and today's topic is how to clean up your headspace.
Hello and welcome to Illumination Podcast with Nick and Kizma, bringing you ancient wisdom for modern day success so that you can have the mindset to get your life and business set.
As always, thank you for tuning in. And if you're new to the podcast, take a quick second to hit the subscribe button in iTunes, SoundCloud, or Stitcher. If you want to get the inside info for this and every episode, as well as some free gifts, go to illuminationacademy.net/podcasts. And now let's dive in to get your mindset for your life and business set. Hello, Kizma.
Well, hello. Welcome, everyone.
Welcome. How is your week?
My week has been fascinating. Here we are in a Sunday podcasting. Let's give a shout out to Common Grounds because we love them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Where
what a nice place to have this. I do miss, I got to tell you, I still miss the Train of Truth a little bit.
Well, the Train of Truth is here. It's just more distant. It's more distant, but it will arrive. It will be here.
It'll go by, but it's a visual more.
Yeah.
We're going to have to shout it out. Like, there's a Train of Truth going by. I swear it's right there.
Right. But anyways, yeah, it's been a pretty intense week, which I believe is what led us to this topic today, which is really fascinating and very relevant, I believe, for today's world and definitely for anyone who is working on their own projects, systems, business, at work, teams, family, just about every human.
Yeah, it's just, if you're a human being, then cleaning up your headspace is...
Clean up and clear up that headspace.
Yeah, pretty vital. And I didn't really realize until you said that, but yeah, it has been a pretty intense week overall.
It's been a lot, yeah.
There's a lot of things.
Whew. I mean, I got back from New York. What day was it? I'm not even sure. Today's Sunday. I got back on Tuesday.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Was it Tuesday? And then was just dive right in. And New York was awesome as always. Love that city. Go New Yorkers. Taking action. Everyone's moving.
It seems like a lifetime.
Everyone's moving in that city. They just go. It's really impressive.
Yeah, it's a funny thing time, I think. And
funny thing time.
It gets warped based on your headspace. You know, that's one of the interesting things about it is like, man, you know, a few minutes can seem to take forever, or it can go by in a flash before you even know what happened. And most of that has to do with how we're living in our own head, you know, and relating to that.
And I think, you know, we've talked about mindset again and again and again, and how when the thought flow is either in the past or either in the future, the most powerful moment, this one is being missed. And I think we see this. We see a lot of people moving around, doing their thing, not fully present to the present moment. And so the actions that they're in become exhaustive.
Yeah, I mean, it's draining to go in a million different directions all at once.
It's draining to go in three, past, present, and future, let alone adding the phone and the computer and people talking and what it's all very exhaustive.
Yeah. And just not, I don't think the way that anybody really wants to be living.
Well, it's not, I believe, how we're designed. I mean, we've got this brilliant mind, right? We've got this thing, like it's just, we haven't even tapped into it, and more we are. And if we're not present to the brilliance of our own minds, we're really missing out. And that's what happens. I think people get pulled into the fears and the anxieties and the worries. Of course, there's a lot going on this week. I mean, that was the other thing coming off of that unfortunate shooting in Las Vegas, which was horrendous. But it's like the energy around people on the planet can become very low vibe.
Well, you know, you bring up a pretty interesting point about being present to your own mind. And in a certain respect, that's kind of the problem too.
What do you mean?
Is it gets real noisy up there.
Oh, yeah.
And so, okay, so all these different voices in your head, you know, and I'll just say it, you know, like we've all got them, you know, okay, you know, you don't have to be like a paranoid schizophrenic to have voices in your head. Like we've all got that.
Everyone has a voice.
This conversation's going on over here. This conversation's going over there. And then there's like all these kind of like conflicts. It's almost like an argument going on up there.
Yeah, but see, I believe those arguments, those voices represent either the past or the future, and usually the future, which is where the anxiety is.
That is true. And they're an aspect of your own mind, right?
Correct.
Right. So, all of that's going on up there. And yes, does some of that have to do with the future? Absolutely. Some of those conversations are like, I wonder what's coming, and all the lack and scarcity and fear and all those kinds of things. And certainly the regret of just, man, I wish I would have done that differently.
Oh, regrets, heavy.
Dang it, there goes another day, and I just didn't get done what I needed to get done. And, all the guilt and, things that go along with that, that's painful too. But that's what I mean is like, okay, you be present to your mind. That's awesome. And that's where a lot of people stop is like, oh, I'm just going to be mindful. Well, no shit, you're mindful. Like your mind is freaking full of all kinds of stuff. And that's so cool that you're aware of that. That's nice. But what about cleaning house?
Yeah, got to clean house. That's hilarious. Your mind is full when you're mindful.
Yeah, very, very full.
I can tell Nick's mind has been full.
It has been, and that's one of the things, and this is like the very human part of me, that I just so sympathize with people who have struggled with anxiety and this just not really being able to control your own mind because it sneaks in there.
It does.
It's freaking
takes over
wildly.
fast.
Yeah.
If the intellect is not present at forefront, the intellect being that driver, right? The muscle that drives your car of life, the discerning factor, if it's not front and center, so easily the mind will hijack the thoughts.
It happens before you even know it. And it starts to creep in there and get noisier and noisier. It's like the people that, you're going to invite some people over to your house and I used to throw a bunch of parties when I was younger. And
Party boy.
Okay, everybody, like it's a chill. We're going to have a chill night, So then, okay, cool. And then this person comes over and then that person comes over. And before you know, you got a raging party up in your head. And if that's a fun party, that's kind of nice. But like I said, like a lot of times in our daily lives, it's just not that fun. Not everybody's getting along.
The party in the head is not as much fun as the party at the house.
And and then you're wondering, like, you get enough people in a small space, and they start conflicting with one another, and you can have a mess before you know, things are going to start breaking.
Totally.
And I don't know. I mean, when I think about like how insidious it can be and how quick it can sneak up on us, man, it can really send you for a loop before you even know what happened. And that's where it's like, I think it's important to be aware, like you said, being, really mindful or present to your mind.
And I think it can do that faster, more rapidly when a human is around other people that are spinning out as well. So if you don't have an intellect to borrow, if you're not around someone who's really grounded and demonstrating like, really conscious, intentful thought in creation, it's easy to get swept up in the energy of everyone else who's just going a million miles an hour.
Yeah, I'd agree with that 100%. And whether it's their conversation or whether it's the demands that you either, have or perceive,
right?
Then that can just make it so much worse, like so much faster,
right?
And that's another part of this whole where it gets real noisy up there is how we pressurize ourselves.
Yeah,
like you're going to experience it however you're going to experience it, and that is your truth. We've talked about that. So whether or not a bunch of other people are putting pressure on you, if you're putting that pressure on yourself, it's the same, if not worse.
Yeah.
And that's
self-inflicted pressure.
Then all of a sudden you've got that, that kind of volatile party happening up in your head. It's getting a little like, oh man, like I don't know if this is going to spin off the rails.
And it spins, it goes and it goes, and pretty soon, like it's the lowest vibe you ever thought you could have.
Yeah, it's true. And I do believe that anxiety is a part of our human condition that so many people have to deal with in some way, shape, or form. Like you have to learn to deal with anxiety without it destroying you. Yeah. It's a natural part of being human, the anxiety, the human condition.
I would say it's not, we're not supposed to be so anxious, but it has been acquired over millions of years and lifetimes where
the
conditioned human personality gets anxious.
That's a really good point. Yeah, I don't believe also that we're meant to be that way, but walking in the way that we walked into the world that we're walking into, it's no surprise that we experience this.
Here's something that's fascinating to me too. Have you know, we talk about this, your belief is your truth, your belief is your truth. Like as you think, so you become, all right? Buddha, Einstein, they've all said it. The clearer you all get listening, the more aware you're going to see immediate response. So if you're thinking, say you've got a business out there, I think we have a lot of coaches that listen to our podcast, people building businesses, and you start to have fluctuations of worry, of money, money anxiety, financial anxiety. Guess what you're going to see from people that you talk to who are very interested in your service, your product? That conversation will be reflected back to you.
Yeah.
Their first reason to not buy or to ponder is they'll be like, I don't know, I'm afraid of the fine, like it seems like a lot of money, or I'm worried about, or I'm anxious. It's almost like what has been percolating in you, you attracted that in them. So this is a big shift when you pivot that internal and you're like very certain in how or what you are required to do to create that financial presence in your company, in yourself, then you're attracting more confident people in that realm.
Yeah, that's interesting.
I know this to be true.
No, I've definitely seen that myself hundreds and hundreds of times. And do you ever notice that that immediate, like that knee-jerk reaction to externalize it, to make it about like, oh man, like this person just,
Yeah, you can't do that. You can choose to do it, but the most rapid way to resolve what's going on in us as humans is to look inward and be like, where in me is this? If someone does something, you're like, they're judging me, or I feel guilty, or I feel hurt. What's going on inside? There's a seed, right? It's a seed, and someone else's energy or their thoughts, their words that are percolating, they're like pouring it on top of that seed and it's sprouting in you. And so the faster you get to your stuff, solve it and resolve it, doesn't matter what they say. You'll be like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah, you definitely have a lot of more elbow room, and you have the opportunity to not buy into that. Because that's, it's funny that you brought up sales, but I think that's, the sales conversation or I look at that as enrollment. I think about it in terms of enrollment, and you're always in a conversation like that, whether you realize it or not. It's not necessarily about buying stuff or.
Yeah. You enrolled me to go get tacos today before the coffee. That was a good enrollment. Awesome. It was done through text, by the way. I'm like, let's go to Phil's and get some coffee. And sure enough, there's a little text chat. I was thinking about, what is it? Hagos, yeah. Great tacos down here in Encinitas area for those of you that live in SoCal.
I enrolled you with my old English.
Yeah, he used some old English on me. It was very bizarre.
It was.
He's trying to be romantic.
I watched a few episodes of Poldark. Anyway, that's beside the point. Back to the enrollment conversation.
There's an example of a spin.
Yeah, you enrolled me. You totally took me down there. But what a great example of like where you've got your idea. Like it's kind of like you got your idea for your day. Like this is how my day is going to be, and you wake up and you're like, oh, I'm ready to, and then all of a sudden you get an email or you get a text, and then somebody else is enrolling you in their day and in their conversation. And then before you know it, you're out in left field and you're like, what the heck happened to my day? And then the conversation in your head of like, oh man, like I meant to do that or this, and I should have done this or I should have done that. And it gets really heavy and really congested up there. And the reason why is because there's all these open loops, and it happens because you get enrolled in somebody else's thing or somebody else's idea or somebody else's agenda and out of your single pointed focus. Pretty fascinating. And that's a recipe. That's a sure recipe for huge pressure on yourself and a lot of disappointment and certainly a high level of anxiety.
Completely.
Yeah. Fascinating.
So what to do?
Well,
It's the purpose of this episode.
Let's talk about what not to do.
Okay. Let's do that.
And some of the things that...
Process of elimination. Not that.
Well, let's talk about some of the conventional solutions.
Okay.
It's no secret that we're one of the most medicated societies.
Yeah, it's a tough one.
So I'm not saying that that's necessarily...
Sometimes it's necessary.
Yeah, I'm not saying like don't. What I am saying is like, if you really want that to be your permanent solution, go for it. But that's not how most people get into that. And they get enrolled in the first part of it, which is important sometimes, get your feet on the ground.
Yeah, right.
Like, let's just deal with this part so that you can get your feet on the ground.
Exactly. Sometimes it's necessary.
And then it stretches out for years on end, in order to figure that out.
Because there's been no other solution given.
Right. So as far as, I my personal feeling and what I've seen through experience is that that is not, in the vast majority of cases, it is not necessary to live your life on medication.
Yeah.
And most people that I've talked to do not want to be on it. Well, but they just don't know another way.
Yeah. You get a lot of clients and students in Energy Mastery for that purpose, to remove themselves from medication.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And it works.
It does. Yeah, it absolutely works.
Just to be clear, we're not saying don't stop your meds if you're taking, because we know these can be very effective and miracles. But the thing is, if there's something else to be done, let's look at that too. And let's look at things to do so that if you don't want to go that route, you don't have to.
Yeah. And just my other, extra careful disclaimer there is to say too, that I would never recommend that. If that's something that you want to do, awesome. Like, I can show you, some things to help you. But I'm not a doctor and, yada, just don't listen to anything I say, yada, yada, yada. We're all good here. It's just energy. We're not, it's all safe. Medication has its place. Western medicine is, I believe, extraordinary at delivering diagnoses. And if a diagnosis were the solution, then we wouldn't be having too many problems. Yet we have way, way more anxiety.
We've got to get to the depths.
You got to get into it. Checking out.
So avoid checking out. What does that mean?
Well, I personally tried this one.
Law and Order?
In a lot of different... Law and Order was one of them. Lost was one of them.
TV.
This was something, just in my own struggles with this, it was something that kind of came up for me this week. I was kind of reminiscing through some conversations that we were having, actually. And I remembered the first time I had like a real, like, full-on anxiety attack. I was about like 26 years old. I had a career and it was like holiday time. And I was in my office and just like, there was like major projects that I was working on, like 3 major projects, all with huge deadlines. It was just before the holidays. So there's like all this shopping to do because my family's one of those weird families that everybody still exchanges gifts. And I'm like, why? Like, really? I love you all. Like, do we have to do? But anyway, so we were still doing that. And then, as I was a musician at the time, so working full time. So I've got all these different programs that I'm preparing for. And it just like really started to pile up on me. And then I like, that's when I know how it sneaks in.
Yeah.
And then before I knew it, I was just like, man, like I locked the door on my office and I just started like crying. I was like, oh man. And my breathing was like,
were you spinning, like breathe. Feeling dizzy, vertigo-ish?
My head was spinning, but I didn't feel the physical symptoms of that. My head was spinning. I was like, this is one of the things that I do when I start to get some anxieties. I start to make lists. And in that particular case, like it was list after list after list. And then I was like, holy crap. And I just started to freak out. Yeah. And what I learned from that was how incredibly vulnerable human beings can be to this. And we think that we've got it all together, and you think that everything's like, yeah, I can totally handle this. But then it kind of sneaks in there and it just really sends you spinning. And then it really is that straw that broke the camel's back. And you see it also with, the rock stars. It's a great life. And then all of a sudden they're like suicide.
Yeah. So sad.
And it reminds people of like, here's this person, here's a picture of this person like smiling and laughing not a week before they took their own life.
Yeah. Devastating.
And to me, I'll never forget that feeling for myself. And I whenever I look at people there's a part of me that always remembers that, man, like you just never know what that person's going through right now.
Yeah. And it reminds me that it's true. The human mind is so precious, right? We've talked about this, how it's an energy force, how it allows you to go anywhere, to think anything, to imagine anything. It's so precious, but so often we don't treat it with tender, loving care.
The furthest from it.
We abuse it, we misuse it, we create a pressurized system for it. And this is like the most exquisite part about us.
It's true.
Yeah. So
it's the
how
most
do we
precious.
love?
Well, but it brings me back to that checking out. Is like, well, when that happened to me, like I felt incredibly raw after that, just like, whoa, like that really rocked my world. There's more to it that I didn't get into, here, but yeah, like I was left feeling incredibly raw and really checked in actually. But I think while it's building up a lot of times, is you just feel like you come home from the day and you're just exhausted and you just want to check out.
Right.
And you think that, I can't do anything but just sit on the couch.
Right.
Flip on the TV for a while. Or, oh man, I really need to get to the weekend. I really need some space.
Yeah, right.
And you're right. You do need some space.
Right.
But a weekend ain't going to do it.
Yeah.
The odds are stacked against you, or, oh man, like I just need to vacation. Or remember that one company, I can't remember which company it was, but they were talking about like, this is how we manage so when people start to get kind of, bound up, we just go out and play some volleyball. And I was like, that's cool. Like that's
good. They get in their bodies, they move.
Yeah. I appreciate the fun aspect of that culture, but there's a reason that people are becoming pressurized like that. And that's what we really want to get to. But checking out isn't going to do it.
Right.
It's just not a long-term solution. And before you know it, you've gone through, seasons of Mad Men or seasons of whatever it is that you're watching and you feel even worse.
Yes, exactly.
So not the solution.
Not the solution. So let's look at the solution that we came into this podcast because we kind of went for it this weekend to create it.
Well, I knew what I was getting into. I knew why I was going there. And I said, like, you got to come. So there's this really special place that is basically a retreat center. It's like 600 acres of really beautiful California country. And so it's just a really special place. We'll talk about it in another episode. But as soon as you step out of the car, it's quiet.
It is so freaking quiet. And so Nick's like, let's go here. I think actually I asked you to take me.
I did. I said when I first went, I was like, you got to go.
Yeah. And then when I was in New York, I'm like, well, on Saturday, let's take a few hours. Like, I know I want to work in the morning. Let's take a few hours and go to that place because I was so intrigued.
Yeah. And so we did. And
got space.
There's just something so magical. We sat down and there's a building there that you can just sit in. And when you sit in, it almost is like the noise canceling headphones.
That's what I kept saying. I'm like, do they have some weird thing going on in here where they're sucking the noise out? Because it was just so quiet. And the mind just went, like landed. It's the best way I can describe it is like just kind of landed and everything was so quiet. And from that place, it was like space.
Yeah.
I don't know how else to describe it, but space for intuitive measures, for downloads, for contemplation, for nothing. And it just, it was like such a shift in the way of being because I know you and we each spend a big chunk of time every morning with our ritual. And it's very important because of all the clients that we serve, that we work with, and for what we seek in our lives. But sometimes I can't get that quiet when I'm studying, I'm still thinking, I'm still writing, I'm still doing. This was like nothingness.
Yeah. That's the magical part about that place is that you just drop in. And to me, it's just such a reminder and such a shocking realization of just how that noise starts to creep in, how the volume starts
Yes.
to turn up in the head. And then all of a sudden you're just like, poof, like, oh man, like this is what it's like to be quiet. Like
Right.
I almost forgot,
And you realize in the quietude, wherever that might be, I bet each of you has a place that you've been to or you can go or whatever. When it gets quiet, I think one of the most extraordinary events is that you realize any problem is, we say this all the time, every problem is driven by its unfolding solution, but as well, every problem is outmatched by our divinity as a divine creation. It's outmatched. But when you're in the world, when you're just sucked into the mundane of the world, sometimes it's tricky to feel like you're divine.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's creating from that space is a radically different experience.
Yes.
And I've done a lot of both. We are trained through our education system to create with our mind, to create with our thoughts.
Right.
And, you just go. And that's where it gets real congested up in the head. And there's another way.
Yes.
And you have to kind of relearn how to use it. And that is getting quiet and simply getting quiet and receptive so that you can allow that information to come through. And then you become more of a conduit and less of the doer,
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And I know that might sound pretty radically different. Any artists out there will know what we're talking about. But what I'm here to say is that it's not relegated to one area of your life. Like you can actually do this in every area of your life.
Yes.
So many people, they have that one thing that they can do where it's like, oh yeah, like I can just totally focus in on that and just let things flow. And it's so
Right.
cool. And that's great because you can do that. That's proof that you can let go of the thinking mind and just let yourself be in that flow. And you can also translate that into every other area of your life. But I've found that it's a learned skill.
Yes.
Because not so much as learned, it's almost like you have to like unlearn all the other ways that we've been taught.
Well, it's like when you're in the world and there's so much noise and there's even more noise and so many people around you with noise in their heads. Like you have to remember there's like this collective consciousness. And if you're around a lot of people with a lot of mental stuff going on, just thinking, you will feel that. And it will start to kind of percolate in you. So it is like, it's just almost like a decision, but a willingness to be like, okay, I'm just going to go for the quietude. Not even thinking I'm going to meditate, I'm going to do this, because I find a lot of people, we'll do a whole episode on this, they're not really understanding what meditation is, and they're actually doing it in a way that creates more noise. But just be like, I'm just getting quiet.
Yeah, the quietude, the willingness to be in that. And the mind, the thinking mind immediately starts to reject that because, especially if you're like a high achiever,
right? Because
you're like, well, I'm not doing anything. I need to be doing something. And so your mind starts to kind of reject that idea. And then you're like, oh, then you start the conversation. It's like a chain reaction. Right. What I found is so magical about that place is that you're actually kind of held in a space there where that your mind wasn't going to get too far away from you.
Exactly. I mean, in case in point, we did that yesterday, came back, we just did a little something. And this morning I came here to the office and it was just like, boom, immediate download of what I was seeking in terms of information, next steps, etc. And my poor team, I'm like blowing up everyone and just like, here we are. Because I had the space for it to arrive and to then flow. Yeah. Now, we did something different today. That was a different kind of pattern interrupt.
We did?
Yeah. Well, you enrolled me in the taco stop. So that was like a pattern interrupt. And then we went and had coffee and we were going to come back here and get back to work and podcast. And you're like, you know what? I want to go sit and look at the water.
Oh, I did. That's right.
And so we did it. I was like, well, okay. So we drove this little lookout point, like right there, and sat for a good 30 minutes and just watched the ocean, like one of the most significant representations of this planet, this massive ocean. And again, it's a reminder of how divine everything is. And when we tap into that, how we can really solve anything.
Yeah, that's right.
So it was like a pattern interrupt.
It was. Yeah. Yeah.
It was not as quiet. There were a few people in and out, but it was just a shift. It gave us just like 30 minutes to breathe and have creative space.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. It's funny. Yeah. I almost forgot.
No agenda.
Yeah. No agenda. It's really important to have those times when we have no agenda.
No agenda. And some of you listening, you might be creative. You might want to be like drawing. You might want to be writing. Maybe you're in your body, you're going for a run or whatever. My suggestion is change it up. Pattern interrupt. Do something different. Let your body, let your mind, let your thoughts and your emotions experience something different. It's like a new breath of air.
And wherever you do that is fine. Like you can totally just do that anywhere. It reminds me actually of those episodes of Mad Men.
Yes, right. I know. I'm going to take a nap.
And he would just lay down on his couch in his office. And then, and he's the creative director. I mean,
right.
It might have had something to do with the, 3 martinis that he had, at lunch, whatever. But, besides that, no. But what are the things that I really took away from this is like, wow, like, you could just like lay down and relax and actually be creative.
And download.
And just let your mind kind of wander enough to open up the space for that to come through.
Universal intelligence space.
And then there are more refined ways to do that as far as like tapping in and really going, knowing how to go and get that information that you're looking for.
Exactly.
But at the end of the day, like that creative, I think so many people, especially anybody who's got to be creative for your living, which is mostly everybody. They might not relate it to that, but engineers can be very creative because they have to figure out all these problems.
Yeah.
Lawyers, of course, doctors, my God, you're dealing with human beings, on and on. Everybody has a need for that creative aspect and to have that channel be open. And mostly we've learned to utilize that by pressurizing ourselves.
Yeah, no fun.
And it works, but it's not sustainable.
It's not sustainable, and I don't think it's as of the excellent quality it could be.
I would totally agree with that. So that space, that pattern interrupt that you call it, and that little space for just kind of creative wandering is really important.
Yeah.
Yeah, really, really important.
Yeah. So for those of you listening, clear and cleanse that headspace. Find a place to get quiet. Find a place to go and just be with it's okay to ask like for guidance, downloads or whatever, but it's avoid thinking I'm going to sit down and meditate and have my candles and whatever. No, just like find this quiet space and give yourself a big chunk of time to be there and a chunk of time to wind down and land into it. Depending on where you are, the energy might just like allow you to arrive, or you might have to experience, several minutes of just like breathing and getting to that space. Or number 2, pattern interrupt, like really change up your schedule. Do something, be somewhere where there is no agenda and where the electronics are off. Like that's another piece, you know?
I want to get into that actually.
Okay, go for it. I was wrapping up, but if you got one, go for it.
No, but this is important because it's just so ubiquitous in our society.
Yeah.
And it's like, it goes back to that checking out kind of phase.
Yeah.
But it's like on crack because we have our little handy device that can connect us to anywhere, to anything in the world just in our hand at all times.
I know.
And so it becomes a habit.
My solar plexus just kind of lit up.
But you become addicted to that, of just constantly checking and constantly being in that. And then it's like, well, okay, you're stressed out about something. And it's like you go in to like do something on your phone. And what it does, this is what I've discovered, is that it gives something for your mind to focus into that is very enveloping.
Yes.
Right. So it really like just totally draws you into it.
Takes your brain hostage.
And then, that's a great way to put it. That's exactly what it does. It takes your brain hostage. And so then all the other things then just kind of fade away. They fade into the background. And what that's like is like if you're in a really mossy pond, okay, and you put your hands in and you spread your hands apart and then it's like, oh, there's clear water there. and you can see for a second, right? And you're only seeing the one thing, which is whatever you're looking at in your phone, the game or the Facebook or like whatever it is. And then you take your hands out. And then what happens? All the moss comes right back together. And then you're like, boom, and it's even worse. And that is what that addiction to the electronics does. And I mean, I think most of us have been there, to a degree where it just becomes your habit. Yeah. Because we become so reliant on them.
Yeah. And it needs to be taken away in order for the human mind to really sustain the creativity.
Yeah.
Like we can be so creative on our phones, our iPads. It's amazing what kids do these days. But we have to make sure our children are thinking. We have to make sure we're pondering. We have to make sure we're in inquiry.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, man.
And the noise that can be downloaded. I mean, this information age is miraculous, and it's also suffocating.
Well, suffocating. Yeah. It's requiring a much, much, much greater mental control.
Yes. Discernment.
Yeah. In order to utilize it without getting sucked into the endless vortex of information and shares and news and all this kind of stuff.
Who cares how many people like your post? Stop it.
Stop it. Stop it.
So the reverse engineer, put down your phone, close your computer. Think, color, dance, whatever.
Dance party. That actually works.
It does work, right?
Yeah.
Music is the language of the higher self.
And just moving your body.
Yeah. Number 2, pattern interrupt. No agenda, something different. Something different. Once a week, once every 2 weeks really will just kind of give you this new breath. Number 3, find a quiet space.
Thanks for remembering all those.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Better believe it.
So that's the tip of the iceberg there. But I guarantee that if you just do a couple of those simple things, take a few breaths, give yourself a few moments to breathe, that you're going to start to find a little bit more headspace and really start to clean that up. And that's going to open up that channel. And that's, I think if anything, that's really what we're looking at, is sure, you can keep doing things the old way. You can try to keep creating with your mind. You can stay on the roller coaster of the emotions and getting sucked into the chaos of the world, or you can find a new way to create in your life.
Exactly.
And a new way to be in your life that really has that sense of freedom that we're all so craving.
Totally. Yeah. So love to hear from you guys what you do to get quiet, to create creativity and eliminate that stress, and hope you try out our suggestions. And as well, the Paradise Pivot. If you've not yet checked out that simple little exercise, go to the show notes or kismaawake.com/paradise.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Kisma. That was fun. I was really excited to talk about that. So thank you.
I am too.
Yeah.
All right.
Peace, everybody.
Namaste. Hey, thanks for jamming with us today. And if you enjoy Illumination Podcast, please go ahead and share it with someone you love. Give us a rating, review, download our podcast. And remember, you can find us at illuminationacademy.net/podcasts. Talk to you soon. Namaste.